Recently, several media outlets and even elected officials have begun making dangerous accusations linking the Orthodox Church to, quote, Russian intelligence operations. As an American and as an Orthodox Christian, I feel compelled to respond, not only for the sake of truth, but for the safety of our communities. Let's begin with a claim published on November 25th, 2025 in the Daily Caller. Derek Van Buskirk, summarizing a letter from Representative Joe Wilson to Attorney General Pam Bondi, writes, quote, the letter references reports documenting ROKOR-affiliated clergy participating in or condoning persecution of Christians within the occupied Ukrainian territories, end quote. He even hyperlinks 2 articles to make the claim look sourced and verified, but those articles never mention ROKOR, not once, because they can't. There are no ROKOR parishes in Ukraine or Russia. The closest ROKOR parish is actually in Germany. Van Buskirk's allegation isn't just sloppy, it is false, slanderous, and dangerous, accusing a church directly participating in violence or of being tied to foreign intelligence operations invites hostility and even violence, something our churches have already faced in the last several years. His article goes further. Although he admits to having seen the catacomb churches, where the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, UOC, is forced to worship, he repeatedly calls their suffering, quote, alleged persecution. Yet in the same breath, he quotes Viktor Yelensky, head of Ukraine's State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience, openly acknowledging a, quote, full-scale crackdown on the UOC because of supposed connections to the Moscow Patriarchate. So which is it? Alleged persecution or persecution so official that the head of the state agency regulating religion freely admits to it? Whatever word they prefer, the reality is clear. Ukraine is persecuting a religious group in violation of international law. That includes Article 18 and Article 27 of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the OSCE Vienna 1989 commitments, and Article 7 of the Rome Statute, which defines religious persecution as a crime against humanity. And again, we should emphasize, international law does not allow persecution even when a church has real or alleged foreign ties. Yet, Representative Joe Wilson, a sitting U.S. congressman, insists that the UOC's remnants of Moscow leadership pose, quote, substantial threats to civilians. Let me ask a simple question. Is Joe Wilson an expert in Orthodox canon law, a bishop, a theologian perhaps? No. He is extrapolating political conclusions from a church structure he does not understand. His claims also contradict the findings of Yelena Bogdan, the former head of Ukraine's own religious affairs agency. After an extensive state investigation, she concluded that the UOC had no administrative ties to the Moscow Patriarchate. For stating that truth, she was fired and replaced with a Viktor Yelensky, a man who has written openly about the need to eradicate religion and who, unlike the UOC clergy, actually does have ties to the Soviet system. The careless accusations don't end there. In their letter to AG Bondi, Representatives Joe Wilson, Don Bacon, and Austin Scott claim there is credible evidence that the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, ROKOR, continues to serve as an instrument of the Kremlin. They, of course, provide no evidence whatsoever, and that's because none exists. Instead, they recycle old claims about Patriarch Kirill's alleged involvement with the KGB in the 1970s, apparently unaware that the Cold War ended and that the KGB ceased to exist more than 3 decades ago. They also appear to have no idea what ROKOR even is. ROKOR was founded in opposition to communism after the Bolshevik Revolution. It was a beacon of anti-Soviet resistance throughout the entire Cold War. Not even during the Red Scare did anyone suggest shutting down ROKOR. In fact, President Ronald Reagan publicly thanked our synod for its steadfast stance against Soviet tyranny. It was members of ROKOR who worked with Radio Free Europe and others to project Christian messaging behind the Iron Curtain. One of the most prolific voices of that era, Father Viktor Potapov, was directly slandered and doxxed by Representative Wilson, for which an ethics complaint is certainly warranted. Our church remained so wary of Soviet influence that it took 17 years after the fall of the USSR before ROKOR was convinced the church in Russia was genuinely free and could enter into Eucharistic communion again. And even then, as the Act of Canonical Union makes clear, we remain completely self-governed, administratively, financially, canonically, and legally separate and independent. In other words, ROKOR is not and never has been an instrument of any foreign state. We are an American church. Our first hierarch today is a born and raised American from a working class family in Trenton, New Jersey. Most of our clergy and faithful are American, Many are converts. Many are veterans, combat veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. My own parish has a priest and deacon and numerous converts who served honorably in our armed forces. As for me, I was born and raised in ROCOR. My father is a ROCOR priest. Our family can trace our lineage back to the Mayflower. I was raised to love God, to love my neighbor, and to love the freedoms our Constitution guarantees. At 18, my father encouraged me to be the change I wanted to see in politics, and I've spent years serving the Republican Party at the state and national level, including 2 terms as state chair of the North Carolina Federation of Young Republicans, and I'm currently in my 2nd term as co-chair of the Young Republican National Federation. Yet today, members of my own party say that I and the people I love are foreign agents. So how did we reach such a moment? Part of the answer is ignorance. Wilson, Van Buskirk, and the Lansing Institute clearly do not understand how the Orthodox Church functions. They speak of Patriarch Kirill as if he were a pope, whose every word binds every Orthodox Christian. That is not how Orthodoxy works. We are governed by councils, by consensus, not by papal fiat. We are not Eastern Catholics, and equating us with Kremlin agents because of a superficial misunderstanding of church structure is reckless and irresponsible. Frankly, it's un-American. But ignorance cannot be erased in a 10-minute video. As long as people never meet us, never sit across from us, Orthodox Christians will remain an abstract boogeyman for political opportunists. That is why we must show up. And that is why I am asking you to join the Society of St. John for our Legislative Action Day on December 16th, 2025. Together, we will meet with our elected officials, pray for our country, and show America who we truly are: faithful, patriotic, everyday Americans. Visit societyofstjohn.com to register. If you cannot attend, consider donating to support someone who can. I'm Catherine Whiteford, Director of Government Relations at the Society of St. John, and the proud daughter of a ROCOR priest.